Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 22nd of July, 2024, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson, and we're delighted to be joined by Ben Rubin. We'll just say it's a little bit rainy and dull here in Plymouth, as you can probably see as the backdrop, but we're staying positive because it's all change in the world.
Are we?
Of course.
Excellent. Where are we starting then?
A blank sheet of paper, I think, is where we should start. So what's been happening? Well, of course, the big decision has been made and Biden is no longer going to be with us. So let's have a look at some of the headlines here. And, well, they're all very similar. Biden quits, except for the Financial Times, who said that he'd pulled out of the White House. Well, there we are, but probably aptly put. But of course, who are we now going to get? Well, apparently odds are on that it's going to be Kamala coming in. What do you think, Mike?
Well, last night the rumour on the streets was that perhaps Hillary might make a reappearance, but apparently she's got behind Kamala. But then there's the issue of Michelle Obama, because Barack Obama has not, or at least had not, given Kamala his seal of approval. So maybe Michelle or Michael or whatever her name is possibly going to run.
Okay, well, we'll see. Well, I thought we'd just pop across to Keir Starmer, because he was tweeting out his great respect for the for President Biden's decision, and he looked forward. I respect President Biden's decision, and I look forward to us working together during the remainder of his presidency. I know that, as he has done throughout his remarkable career, he will have made his decision based on what he believes is best for the American people. Now, I was pretty surprised at this, because here Starmer was not shocked and surprised. I mean, you know, Biden, why should he have stepped down, Mike?
Well, I don't understand it, because it's no time at all since we were told different.
Well, let's have a look at that little clip where Starmer was telling us that there was absolutely nothing wrong with Joe Biden.
Prime Minister, you know what an increasing number of people are saying? They're implying that President Biden is senile. Is he?
No, we had a really good bilateral yesterday. We were billed for 45 minutes. We went on for the best part of an hour. We went through a huge number of issues at pace. He was actually on really good form and
mentally agile.
Absolutely across all the detail. We were going at pace through a number of issues, which was really important to me, because obviously it was my first opportunity to have a bilateral like that. And he's shown incredible leadership. If there's one thing that came out of the council session yesterday, it was a clear understanding by everybody here that we face probably more threats now than we've faced for many years, and that we need the resolve of NATO as the alliance that's been there for a very long time, that defensive alliance. And President Biden has led through that some of the most challenging issues, actually, that we are facing globally.
We've seen George Clooney suggesting he's not up to it. Is that unfair?
Well, I've given you my readout of the meeting we had. As I say, we covered a lot of ground, strategic ground, international stuff, and not just Ukraine. He was on good form, and of course, you know, various interventions yesterday. We went straight from that to the dinner that he hosted. So I was actually really pleased to have the opportunity to be clear about the special relationship and about our long-standing commitment to NATO at this really important time.
Well, there we are. It's confusing, isn't it? Because the world seems to think that Biden was having some severe mental issues, but apparently not the Prime Minister. But let's have a look at Joe's letter. We'll just read a little bit of it. He said, my fellow Americans, over the past 3.5 years, we've made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation, lowering prescription drug costs for seniors and expanding affordable health care. We've provided critically needed care to million veterans exposed to toxic substances. We passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, and we've appointed the first African-American woman to the Supreme Court. So it's all good news. He's really done a brilliant job, and he's thanking the American people. And he says that we got over the pandemic. Some of these comments puzzle me, so I think I'm going to have to bring in a couple couple of question marks there, but he said we've protected and preserved our democracy. We've revitalised and strengthened our alliances around the world, apart from the ones that are running away from him at the moment. It's been the greatest honour of my life to serve as president, and while it's been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it's in the best interest of my party and the country for me to stand down. Can't understand why, because Starmer says you're on great form, Joe. I'll speak to the nation later this week, and then he'd like to express his deepest gratitude to Camilla. Is that not bringing something in there? Yes, it's happened. There we are. It must be a Joe Biden letter because the graphics didn't want to work. And he said, I believe today what I always have, there's nothing America can't do when we do it together, particularly fomenting and prosecuting wars. We just have to remember we are the United States of America. And I thought I'd end it with a Biden-style question mark, so don't get too worried there, Mike. Let's have a look at who's possibly going to replace him. Well, I've said it's out of the frying pan into the fire because this is the quality of person that we get. I regard all of this stuff as immature in politics, but there we go. She's having a good time and moving around the dance floor. Now, while all of this nonsense is going on, Keir Starmer was tweeting out that we must remember that security and defence cooperation between Ukraine and the UK always matters. And what was the importance of this image? Well, it was Zelensky is the first foreign leader to address the cabinet this century. So that's Starmer getting excited. But I also wanted to point out here that we've got Poland, and it's your friend, Mr. Tusk, Mike, urging the EU to strengthen ties with the US to counter Russian disinformation. I'm going to say to the nation that, in my opinion, Starmer is a key part of disinformation, as we've just demonstrated.
Yes.
But let's leave that bit there.
Well, while all that was going on in the day before, Jens Stoltenberg was in the UK for the European Political Community meeting that we were talking about on Friday's programme. They're looking very cosy together there on this tweet. Jens tweeted out, important European Political Community meeting today hosted by UK PM Keir Starmer. European security and transatlantic security go hand in hand, and NATO is the cornerstone of European security. We've explained why that is in the past with the EU's defence union diagram. But let's just have a look at a couple of the other comments that he made in the official statement following this. It's great to be back in the United Kingdom, he said, and I look forward to attending the meeting of the European Political Community. Today we will discuss how to defend our democracies, both from external threats, but also from internal threats. Now, this is something that I've been talking about for a little bit of time because of this language appearing in the Integrated Operating Concept document. This has came out of the Integrated Defence Review from 2021-2022. Let's just remind ourselves what the words said. The old distinction between foreign and domestic defence is increasingly irrelevant. Home is no longer a secure sanctuary whence we may choose to launch interventions unhindered. Away is no longer a regional horizon, but a global one. And so now we're seeing the same language repeated by the head of NATO, the outgoing head of NATO, admittedly, but nonetheless, it seems to not have moved from being UK military doctrine to being NATO military doctrine. And I see this, Brian, as being unbelievably dangerous because as soon as governments and multinational organizations start seeing domestic citizens as being a threat, we begin to understand who they perceive the enemy to be.
And they're capable of doing anything.
Yes.
Basically.
And you got any other thoughts?
Well, more of this stuff has got to come out to the public as a whole, because UK Column is finding this information, researching it and putting it forward. But of course, you're not reading any of this type of analysis in the wider media. But this is where they're telling us in plain sight what they intend to do. So I absolutely agree. The public has now become the enemy, on a par with the enemy, such as maybe overseas.
So let's look at a few more of Stoltenberg's words. Here he is. The main message is that the stronger the support for Ukraine and the longer we're willing to commit, the sooner the war will end. Now, that seems that's war is peace, right? So we got to continue the war in order to achieve peace.
Well, we're going to have a look in a minute, Mike, because it's clear that the intention is it's utter desperation now to keep the Ukrainian war running, and they will stop at nothing to do that. And of course, nothing for the Ukrainian means, slaughter of a whole nation.
And let's just look then at the final comment from him, because he said the paradox is that now President Putin believes he can wait us out, so therefore the war continues. I mean, is Putin wrong?
Well, he can't wait out the West because the West is failing. But of course, this is typical Stoltenberg, isn't it? Which is playing with the words to put the whole blame back on Putin. But the war continues at the moment because NATO and the West simply do not want to stop the war. And while there are Ukrainians still silly enough to continue fighting a proxy war for the West, that war is going to continue. A little bit later in the news, we can have a look at some of the statistics around casualties. And this is really a horrific conflict, but we're still not seeing any detail about it.
So last week, Charles was talking about the launch of the new defence review from Starmer's new regime, and we'll be watching that very carefully. Of course, this integrated operating concept isn't going away. That will be feeding into that new defence review. And we really just can't overstate this point, the perception amongst our governments and multinational organizations is that people at home are a threat, or as big a threat as people abroad. This is very, very dangerous.
And we've already got commentators calling for this review as soon as possible. In fact, they're desperate that it's not actually happening this year, it's into next year, because they want to get all of the military ducks in a row, working with partners, spreading out the load of the ammunition supply in order to keep Ukraine going. But the way the conflict's going at the moment, it doesn't appear to be that easy, as we are going to see.
Indeed. Okay, Ben, let's welcome you to the programme. And what's the latest on youth leadership and My Life, My Say?
That's a very good question. Yes, hello, everybody. So we're going to talk about My Life, My Say. We've talked about them a lot over the past 6 months or so. They're an extraordinary organisation. They describe themselves as a youth-led charity, but actually they're not youth-led. They might have a few people in there up front talking about what the charity's up to, but they're actually surrounded by a whole bunch of different organisations, from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change to the US State Department, the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, Chatham House, Tortoise Media, Yad Hanadiv, a couple of branches of the Rothschild family, UK Youth, which is patroned by Princess Anne, so like direct line into the top level of the British establishment. One Young World, which is chaired by Paul Polman, who we've spoken about previously, former CEO of Unilever and trustee of the Rockefeller Foundation. So My Life, My Say might present itself as some kind of organic youth movement, but it's absolutely not that at all. They've been extremely active over the past few months. Obviously, it's election season, and they've been sending out updates about how successful they've been in reaching younger people. So they actually reached 4,061,056 young people between the age of 18 and 24. And then nearly 500,000 of these people clicked through one of their links to sign up to vote on the gov.uk website, with a 12% click-through rate. And if we look at the ONS data from 2024, we can see that they actually reached just under 75%, so 73% of all of the 18 to 24-year-olds in the UK, right? That's an extraordinary feat that they have achieved. And let's have a little listen here to the kind of messaging that they've been putting out to them. Yo!
Hey guys! I got this message from that job I applied for last week, and they just fucked me off already.
Get out! I'm busy.
I want to get out of my mum's house. I'm done. I'm trying. Okay, I'm trying.
I have like a vegetarian mindset, but I just can't afford to live the vegetarian life.
I'm busy.
Sake.
Majesties, please.
Unfortunately, on this occasion, you have not been successful.
That is $22.98, please.
You are?
Sona,
Yes.
I'll just take this.
It's a joke. I'm so tired of it now.
It's £14.50, please.
£14.50.
2 coffees and a sausage roll.
Yeah.
I could have helped her, but I'm not having it docked out of my wages. I
can't even get a hospital appointment till next year.
The NHS is so understaffed.
Mind your own business on me.
Pints are so expensive now. I'm getting tap water.
Right, next one's on you.
I can't see round.
I don't ever do that.
It happened to my friend the other day, and she called the police, and nothing happened. They did absolute nothing for it.
I don't have 6 months of rent.
Yeah.
It is rough out here.
Enough is enough.
Something needs to change.
I want to say in this. Get your butt to the polling booth.
This stuff matters.
Let's all be
Just
in
made
this
it from
together.
work, and I'm here. Let's go.
So I find that extraordinarily cynical, as you'd expect, given who we're talking about here, because what they've done, they've obviously done a lot of research. They've established quite substantial networks of relationships with young people. They've asked them what the big issues are that they're concerned about: cost of living, you can't get a job, inflation's going through the roof, the NHS is in meltdown, violence against women and girls, they want a ceasefire in the Middle East. Great. But the thing is, they're being presented with politics as the solution to this, whereas politics is actually the reason that all of this stuff is happening. It's amazing what they've managed to do here. Actually, I might throw this one back at you two gentlemen for a quick comment, because the thing that really jumped out at me here is that we've got the US State Department involved here. That's just cut and dried election interference on their part, isn't it? How many treaties is that breaking?
No, I think you got that wrong. It's only if the Russians do that, it's a problem, Ben. So this is the US directly interfering in our election. That's okay. But if the Russians do it, it's not okay. It's a very simple system.
Okay, good. I'm going to note that down for future reference. Thank you very much. Putin's bad. There we have it. So how have they done this? Right? I mean, this is a huge operation. We've talked about some of the organisations that have been involved in putting it forward, but a lot of it has been driven through corporate partnerships as well. So they talk about 300 organisations in media, entertainment, ad agencies, the youth sector, culture, sports, all different parts of the economy and across society have been helping them with this, from Tinder to Snapchat, the Premier League, so like football and a lot of the Premier League teams have been involved in this. We've got Lime bikes. If you've been to London, you would have seen these littering the place. So they've had their advertising written along the side of the bikes. If you're using one of the bikes and you go into the application to book it, then you're going to be seeing Given X messaging, which is the campaign that My Life, My Say have been running. They've had Ben and Jerry's there as well, the ice cream brand, which is, let's just be honest, junk food. And it's owned by Unilever as well, which used to be led by Paul Polman, who's a trustee of the Rockefeller Foundation. I spoke about him a few minutes ago. The music industry and artists are getting involved in this as well. So here we can see London Grammar, who are a major label signed recording artist. I'd be interested to understand if there's any symbolism in there with the crossed arms and the flower. There's probably something sinister going on, knowing this crowd. The Royal Albert Hall, so a little bit more highbrow, but they've been getting in on the act as well. BBC News. So, obviously non-partisan BBC News getting behind what is essentially a neo-Marxist revolutionary outfit. You've got the Diana Award in there. So the royal family, again, rearing their head. And I'll come back to the Diana Award in a moment. And then also some of the agencies as well. I think this is really important, actually, because one of the organisations that they've been working with is Ogilvy UK. Ogilvy being one of the original advertising agencies, actually, one of the biggest ad networks in the world. It's owned by WPP, who we've spoken about in recent weeks. The chief executive of WPP is Mark Reed, who is a young global leader of the World Economic Forum. And the vice chairman of Ogilvy in the UK is this gentleman, Rory Sutherland, who is one of the biggest proponents and users of nudge theory, the techniques codified by David Halpern and the Behavioural Insights team in the Mindspace document, which have been spoken about for many years now on UK Column. Rory Sutherland and Ogilvy were absolutely at the heart of applying those principles, those techniques to commercial advertising. So nudge has been rooted right into the heart of how this has been developed and how it's been pushed out into the 18 to 24-year-old population in the UK. We also know that beyond Ogilvy, the organisation is working with Freud's Group. Freud's Group is a strategic partner to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So this was reported on the news a couple of months ago now, when it first became apparent that this was a client relationship. And you can see there on the left-hand side that they are presenting some of the campaign artwork, but they put the 17 colours of the SDGs across the top to show that these two things are intrinsically linked with each other. That's essentially what this campaign is. Yeah? This is purely globalist, about pushing towards this international agenda. And sitting right at the heart of it is this fella, Mete Choban, MBE. He's the chief executive. He founded My Life, My Say, and he received his MBE for the work that he did with MLMS in getting young people into voting into the political system. He is a good personal friend of Keir Starmer. He actually posted this on July the 7th, just a few days after the election, congratulating Starmer, celebrating the fact that he's going to have a Labour Prime Minister for the first time in his adult life, and also talking about the fact that Starmer himself has been a good friend to My Life, My Say, but also to Choban personally. And Starmer apparently is the right person to restore young people's trust in politics. I think, well, wait and see how that goes before making any firm decisions either way on it. Now, there's been a big development this week beyond the work that they've done with the general election, and probably because of the work done around the general election, I should say. Choban has been promoted. He's been bumped up into a new role as Deputy Mayor of London for Environment and Energy, working alongside his longtime friend and collaborator, Sadiq Khan. These two hang around with each other all the time, as I understand it. And just from the outside looking in, it looks like Khan is mentoring this young man and grooming him for probably quite a significant position in the global left-wing political establishment. They may be even talking about him as a future prime minister. It wouldn't surprise me. Now, this energy and environment, or so should I say, environment and energy role, builds on the work that Choban's already been doing in Hackney. So he's been running that program for Hackney as a Hackney councillor. He's been introducing electronic charging infrastructure onto housing estates where, frankly, the people that live there can barely afford to eat, let alone buy an electric vehicle. But hey-ho, this is what seems to be front and centre for the Labour Party at the moment. That's all been done via a public-private marketplace. So this organisation here called Zest are making a lot of money out of taxpayers in order to implement this charging infrastructure. So this is just another fascist system that is being perpetuated by Choban, and obviously will be expanded because he's been doing that in Hackney. He's now going to be running it across London. The assumption should be that we're going to see a lot more of that happening across the whole of the city. He's going to be replacing in the position as vice mayor this lady, Shirley Rodriguez. And she was under investigation, interestingly, at the end of last year. And this might be one of the reasons why she's moved on, because she was personally intervening with universities who were writing unfavourable reports and studies about the impact of the ULEZ scheme. So basically, if the science doesn't fit your political agenda, then it's fine for you to ring up and try and strong arm people into changing their positions. So we'll see if Choban carries along in that vein of activity or not. He's probably going to be working quite closely with UK 100, which is the Christopher Hone-backed and C40 City aligned UK network of mayors, local leaders pushing for a cleaner and more powerful communities, as they say on the front page of their website. And he's probably in that role going to be working directly with this fella here, who is Phil Glanville, who's the Director of Advocacy and Engagement at UK 100, who joined there at the end of last year, having had to resign his position as Mayor of Hackney because of a scandal involving a party that he went to alongside someone that he knew had been was being investigated by the police and facing criminal charges for child abuse, or actually, sorry, for pictures of child abuse. Let's just be absolutely clear about that. So that, I think, tells you quite a lot about left-wing politics in the UK and also the people who are sitting at the centre of the climate movement. Now, who's going to be taking over at MLMS? Just very quickly to wrap up, it's going to be these two, Dan Laws and Melissa John. Can't find much on Melissa John, but Dan Laws we've spoken about before. And he is, amongst other things, a Schwarzman Scholar. The Schwarzman Scholarship is designed to build a global community of future leaders who will serve to deepen understanding between China and the rest of the world. And it is backed by Stephen Schwarzman, who's the CEO and chairman of Blackstone. So it seems clear who's going to be pulling the strings at MLMS and right really into the heart of the UK political system from now on.
Ben, thank you very much for that. As you go through it, my mind instantly takes me back to David Cameron's Big Society. And this, to me, seems to be the future. These people are going to be running every aspect of our lives. It is not going to be we, as ordinary people, will decide how we want to live and how we enjoy our lives. But we need to do a lot more work on the whole of the issues that you're covering. So thank you for that. Now, if our viewers and listeners like what UK Column is doing, please join us, become a member. We can only do what we do with your financial support. And a huge thank you to everybody who is contributing to the UK Column to keep us going. We want to grow. So if you can, do join us and take out that monthly subscription. Please share the material. Fortunately, at the moment, we're still not able to use Facebook, but the other platforms are still there. And if you can share our material, it helps. You can also help us by buying something from the UK Column shop. So if you haven't had a visit to that online, please do.
Yes, sorry.
Interview coming up tomorrow.
Yes, so this is an interview with Edward Bartlett from the United States. He's talking to Charles about his fight against neo-Marxist ideologies, which have spawned the gender transition movement. So this is involving an organization called Stop Abusive and Violent Environments, otherwise known as SAVE. So join Charles at 1 p.m. for that tomorrow.
Yeah, brilliant. And I'm also going to put my personal plea out again for anybody who's a UK Column member to buy this Agenda 21, Your Life in Their Hands report. We've got really good reviews from people about it. So a lot of people really excited to have it, be able to read it, understand more, and also start to talk about this subject with other people. So if you haven't yet got one, please get online and make a purchase. That would be good. And also get that date of Saturday, the 19th of October, 2024 in your diary for UK Column, really live. Yes, really live. And that'll be at a location in Bristol. Details of the venue will be with you in due course.
So that's live, in person live, as opposed to virtually live. So anyway, let's move over to Eric Pickles. He's been in South America, in Buenos Aires, a few days ago. And this was the 30th anniversary of Hezbollah suicide bomber murdering 86 people at AMIA Jewish Center, and that was marked by emergency sirens, he says, at that time. But what was he actually doing there? Well, they were creating a set of global guidelines for countering anti-Semitism, because Eric Pickles, Tory, is the United Kingdom's special envoy for post-Holocaust issues. So he was there on behalf of the UK. This is what he had to say. Congratulations to Argentina and the US. I'm delighted that the global guidelines for countering anti-Semitism were one of the first documents the UK's new government endorsed. This is not just a responsibility for government. Civil society has an important role to play, and and these guidelines will be crucial in addressing the ongoing scourge of anti-Semitism. So we will link to the document in the show notes if you'd like to go and read the full text of it. But that's what Eric Pickles has been up to. In the meantime, the Board of Deputies of British Jews has been complaining about artworks which are apparently anti-Semitic. So this is all about the Royal Academy, which is running an exhibition of young artists. The Board of Deputies was unhappy about some of the paintings. Let's have a look. The first portrait, number 425, in your summer exhibition, they said, by a member of the RA, Michael Sandel, is somewhat provocatively titled, "The Mass Slaughter of Defenseless Women and Children is Not How You De-Radicalized Gaza." It features a faceless pilot in an aircraft with a Star of David insignia front and center and background of bodies and burial shrouds. The second is from your Young Artist Summer Show by the 18-year-old named Kozar. It shows an individual hiding behind a sign reading, Jews say stop genocide on Palestinians, not in our name. This appears to be a submission from someone non-Jewish. The third, also from your Young Artist Summer Show, is by a 16-year-old named Andy. It features screaming women with a swastika overhead. The artist says he created this piece of work inspired by the recent conflict in Gaza, which he says draws many parallels with Nazis' oppression. So they objected to that. If we just put that back on screen for a second, the current conflict in Gaza is tragic. They say it was precipitated by Hamas, who entered Israel on October the 7th and murdered 1,200 men, women, and children, as well as taking more than 200 hostages. It still holds more than 100. Hamas continues to fight Israel behind civilian population of Gaza, which it uses as human shields. We would question the judgment of allowing these pictures with their highly politically charged and controversial messages into the RA's summer exhibition, particularly with no attempt to present any context or contextualizing works, and so on. What was the response from the Royal Academy of Arts? It was to say sorry. So we recognize an exhibition for young people and artwork by young people is not an appropriate environment for volatile public discourse, they said in a statement. We offer a duty of care to the artists we exhibit and the visitors to our galleries, particularly our youngest and most vulnerable. And they went on to apologize for any harm or any perceived harm done. So that's basically censorship as a result of claims of anti-Semitism, I think that many would dispute. But in the meantime, we've been talking about the UK Holocaust Memorial for quite some time now, because of course there was a bill in June 2023, the Holocaust Memorial Bill, which was passed at that time. Nothing moved on since, but the question is, what would the Labour government do? Now, just to remind you, this is this new memorial to be placed just to the south of Westminster Palace and the Palace of Westminster, and Victoria Tower Gardens. That's what Victoria Tower Gardens looks like at the moment, and this is what it would look like if they build this memorial, and from the inside it would look like this. But of course, why are they doing it? Well, because it features in the 2030 roadmap for UK-Israeli bilateral relations, amongst many, many other things. So the text from this says the UK will open a new National Holocaust Memorial and Learning Centre to stand as a reminder of why we must be relentless in the fight against Holocaust denial and distortion and anti-Semitism. And so that's where we are with that. The Labour Party has now decided to move ahead with it, and basically any claim from Starmer that there's going to be significant change once again seems to be not quite correct.
No, that's true. And as you were delivering that, Mike, I was thinking about Eric Pickles there. Of course, he was community minister in Cameron's day, and Pickles described himself as looking like an unlikely revolutionary, but the revolution starts here, he said very confidently. So was big society the revolution to take over society? And if it was, then we can say that obviously the anti-Semitic lobby is going to be given a complete controlling hand in that new society. And I think there's a lot of questions that need to be asked here. I also think that there's a lot of people in the Christian community that need to start thinking very carefully about what they're starting to see happen.
Ben, tell us about Pharmageddon.
Yes, well, you would think that after the past few years, the pharmaceutical industry would be reflecting and considering how it might change. But something came up on my feed over the weekend that tells me a different story, that actually they're doubling down and they're going after aggressive growth and profit. So let me introduce you to Pharmageddon.
Safe, traditional, old-fashioned, rigid, risk-averse, conservative. These are all words used to describe the pharmaceutical industry on a daily basis. But it has to be that way, right? We're dealing with life and death here. Or does it? Pharmageddon New York is just around the corner. And this is an event where our industry isn't just making failure optional, we're actually encouraging it. Because if you're not willing to fail, if you're not willing to try, you're never going to really succeed either. Don't be one of those people that sits on the sidelines and says, pharma needs to be disrupted, but you're not willing to roll up your sleeves and make it happen. Embrace the chaos. I'll see you in New York.
Well, that's common purpose agenda right there, Ben.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you kind of want the pharmaceutical industry to be risk averse, don't you? And conservative and to move slowly. But that is the move fast and break things, Silicon Valley mindset and ideology brought to the pharmaceutical industry. It's absolutely crazy to see. I mean, just the name of the event alone, Pharmageddon. I mean, who came up with that and thought that that was a good idea? You know. And the name of the organisation behind it, Impatient. Yes, you can see what they've done there, right? It's got patient in it. There's a play on inpatient, so you can see how it links into the medical system. But they're saying they're impatient. They want to get on with it. They don't want to wait. They don't want to do the due diligence. You know, it doesn't matter. As he just said, that was the founder, by the way. He said we're dealing with life and death, aren't we? So we should probably thought, but actually no. Let's just get on with it and continue to innovate. And this is the mentality that is infecting the whole of the health system. We talked about this on Friday. We talked about the commercialisation of the NHS. We talked about the fact that it's now a £200 billion a year captive marketplace where the state essentially works with a hand-selected group of big pharmaceutical companies and technology companies to deliver care, supposedly, to the population. But actually, when you dig into it and you look at culturally and ideologically and sort of tonally what's going on here, it's extraordinarily dangerous, I think, here. So let's read a little bit more about the event. So they talk about it being for the impatient. It's for the disruptors, the weirdos, the renegades. We welcome life sciences leaders, industry newbies, service providers, patients, HCPs, medials, and more. Our makeup is diverse, but our unifying principles are simple. We are united by the idea that our best days are ahead of us, not behind us. Almost triumphant kind of tone to this. And it is mainstream, right? This is not some kind of fringe niche event. It is relatively new, popped up last year. The first one happened in 2023. But they have most of the major pharmaceutical industry represented: GA, AstraZeneca, Novartis, Novo Nordisk, Sanofi. They've got a bunch of universities in there as well. And these are very, very senior people. So you've got people in senior vice president positions, people who are leaders in their organizations coming together at this event, Pharmageddon, to talk about the future of the pharmaceutical industry. And what's on the agenda? So they talk about this idea of a whole new world. This is from the European event that's coming up in September. On my birthday, actually. Maybe I'll have a little trip to Amsterdam. That would be fun. A whole new world. We're going to be pushing new frontiers. It's about more than medicine. We want to propel ourselves into a new kind of healthiness. So this is all of this proactive care. I forget the term that they use off the top of my head, but essentially what this is leading to is an always-on, 24/7, digitally enabled health system that's tracking you, monitoring you, and these are the people that are building it ultimately. They want to completely transform the health system. So actually, you can see the section there called Taking Responsibility. They actually want the pharmaceutical companies to take an active role in building the health system, which is completely unprecedented. Absolutely not something that should be happening, in my view. They again, sort of culturally, tonally, you can see in the top right hand side. I'm not going to say the word effed up leadership, right? So this is the tone and the culture that's coming through from this organisation that's going into building the future of the health system in Europe. I mean, this is literally what they're there to do. They talk about being values driven. They talk about focusing on precision medicine and artificial intelligence, the power of data, and essentially having this total knowledge and ownership of the patient in order to maximize profitability. And I've just run out of time, so I won't go through the US agenda, but it is essentially the same thing. And I just wanted people to be aware that this event is happening, and that this kind of ideology, this kind of mindset is now what is driving the health system here in the UK and elsewhere.
Okay, Ben, thank you for that. Well, as Mike said, there was a lot of common purpose language in that, particularly it's about disruption, it's about chaos, but failure is good. If you fail, don't worry, just get on and do your best and that will be okay. So really serious descriptors there, saying in a very dangerous pharmaceutical industry where mistakes result in people dying, it's okay to make mistakes. Pretty incredible stuff. Well, let's just jump back to the war in Ukraine, and I'm picking up here, you had a sneak preview, the BBC simply no longer reporting because life's too difficult. So no BBC Ukraine reports for 3 days. That was what I saw early this morning. Basically, the fact there is a Russian offensive in Ukraine, that simply vanished from BBC reporting, and they're not talking about it at all. And this one I thought was significant, that basically Ukrainian corruption, which has stopped them getting into NATO apparently, that's disappeared, but it's become Russian corruption now as far as the BBC is concerned. Now I decided just to focus in on this gentleman that a lot of the mainstream media has used to comment on matters to do with conflict, whether it's in Syria, Iraq or around the world. Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, former military man, supposedly specialising in nuclear and biological weapons, but he's often quoted, and this was what he was posting in the Eye on July the 19th. He said that Sir Keir Starmer and his new team have an opportunity to write the history books in favour of democracy, decency and peace. Well, I thought that was pretty unlikely, because it's quite clear that the new government is already full into driving the war onwards, and we get a glimpse of it here with Keir Starmer standing in the background alongside a very puffed up Zelensky, as we're signed into a defence industrial support treaty with Ukraine. Remember that this is the country that has been described as being so corrupt that it can't enter into NATO. But it's apparently okay that UK is signed into deals with this corrupt country and the corrupt leadership. So can we trust Starmer? I think he's just completely laughing at the public. And let's follow on through the segment of this gentleman talking. So he said this: we do not need a bunch of academics to tell the government our army is too small and we have the wrong type of kit to fight the Russians in Europe. Well, we don't really have any kit, but he went on to say this: the mistake the Nazis made in the Second World War was to rely on technology over mass, and we are in danger of repeating the same mistake now. I thought this was just an incredible statement, Mike, because of course the Nazis poured in millions of troops into Eastern Europe, and yes, some of their tanks suffered from technology flaws, but is he really saying that we will only get it right if we follow the Nazi line and pour into Ukraine? So I'm going to question him over this, and I think the real issue was the Nazis got it wrong by invading Russia, which is what I think Mr. or Hamish and his team seem to want to do, or to get the government to do at least. He says that for sure we need precision-guided long-range everything, but we need soldiers to take and hold ground. And at the moment we have neither in sufficient quantities to hold the Russian hordes. Note the language. This is just like reading documentation about the Wehrmacht's attack in Eastern Europe, and apparently we're supposed to be following exactly the same line. It's just quite incredible. Let's give you a little bit more. The UK Ministry of Defence stated last Friday that Russian forces had lost 70,000 men in the last 2 months at the rate of 1,000 a day. And this was likely to continue throughout their summer offensive. Well, there's a Russian summer offensive carrying on at the moment. Whether those losses are correct, I very much doubt it. But listen to, or let's read his next statement here, where he says that Russian forces have gone static. So there's an offensive, but according to him, it's now static because there's little else that they can do. And Putin has said he wants a ceasefire with the current battle lines respected. So I'm just going to put over this static. Is that really the case, Hamish? Because on the battlefront, what is happening is what I have always described as a lava flow attack. The Russians are continually moving forward, hundreds of meters in the built-up areas, often for maybe weeks or months until they take that particular built-up area. But in the more open territory, advances of 1, 2, 3, 4 kilometers, which doesn't sound a lot until this is repeated over days and weeks. And that is how the Russian offensive is moving forward. But if we look at a bit more information here, this is the Kiev Independent, which I noticed had an article about the loss of Russian troops. And this was the figure, 566,710. I'm just going to talk through this a bit because nobody at the moment has the irrefutable evidence of what losses are. But the important thing is the West isn't talking about Ukraine's casualties at all. But if we say that the Ukraine statement of the Russian casualty figures are correct, at a ratio of 3 wounded per 1 dead, Russia has a casualty rates of about 141,000 killed and 425,000 wounded. And this is obviously a huge number of men. Thank you, Mike. But the other thing we've got to remember is that the Ukraine has consistently been outgunned in the whole of this combat, the whole of the war going on in Ukraine, by Russian artillery, airstrikes, the missile strikes, and in recent months by the precision-launched 500, 1,500, and 3,000 kilogram bombs. Why am I talking about this? Because, of course, the evidence suggests that it's going to be the Ukrainians that are taking the higher casualties. And if we just move on through this simple analysis, this is something which should never be forgotten. The BBC does want to talk about it, the UK Ministry of Defence, but the reality is on the battlefield, Ukraine is going to suffer the higher casualties. And if we take that at a 3-to-1 ratio, then we would be saying at the moment that Ukraine had lost about 425,000 men and some women killed, and would have about 1.2 million injured. Now those latter figures look high, but the thing we should remember is that Ukraine has already lost 2 armies, we're going to say of roughly 200,000, and its losses are so high at the moment, it's unable to recruit sufficient troops to sustain losses in a 3rd army. So we cannot give the irrefutable evidence of what these losses are, but it is quite obvious that what we're being told about losses on the Ukrainian side are simply not credible, or we've got to get over the silence. And Mike, I'm just going to say, the more I get into this, the more horrific it is that we've got Starmer now as a Labour politician who simply wants to keep the war going. And the fact is that the casualties now for the Ukrainians so high that they've got to continue these conscription groups lifting people off the streets. But there is some pushback because over recent weeks, Ukrainians have been burning the cars of the conscription groups. So the teams, the men and women who are part of the official government conscription teams are leaving their vehicles outside in car parks outside their flats or their homes, wherever they live. And now Ukrainians are setting fire to those cars in protest at the ongoing conscription. So brutal and unbelievably bloody. And Keir Starmer signing us into an agreement with Zelensky, who still officially should not be in post as president, under the laws and statutes of Ukraine.
Well, I'm hearing that in Poland, they're starting to look to grab Ukrainian men that have left Ukraine and are living in Poland at the moment and start them on training schemes for being shipped back to Ukraine slowly. But, the comment I would make on this, Brian, is I'm just staggered that no matter what side of the argument you might feel that you're on with respect to Ukraine and Russia or with respect to Israel and Gaza, just the sheer quantity of bloodletting that's going on with absolute silence from the majority of people it's beyond my comprehension. I can't work out where has the empathy gone. That's the bit that I can't quite get to grips with at the moment.
It's disappeared. Ben, perhaps we could just look to you on this one, because as you can tell, Mike and I have got to the point where we're reading and describing some of the news happening around where words simply fail you. There appear to be no politicians. Well, one or two of them are standing up and challenging the bloodshed, but otherwise it appears that our political leaders in the West simply want war, and more war.
Absolutely. Well, yes, it does make you wonder what hold Zelensky and Ukraine have over these people, right? I mean, because it's not just loyalty to the cause, is it? I mean, there's something else going on behind the scenes. I also think that a phenomenal propaganda job has been done, particularly on the younger generations, portraying Putin as a vicious dictator who is universally wrong in this situation, and the Ukrainians as innocent freedom fighters trying to extract themselves from tyrannical rule from overseas. And there doesn't seem to be any nuance in this at all, right? And this was true at the start. And concerningly, it doesn't seem to have abated much over the past 2 years, actually. And that's the thing that I think you guys have actually just touched on, right? Is that despite this industrialized slaughter happening at the behest of our political masters, the everyday people on the street just seem completely immune to or detached from the realities of what's happening in their name, essentially.
Yeah. Well, it's happening in their name at the moment, Ben, but if the national service / conscription policy continues, which there's no reason to believe it isn't, it may only be a few months or years before we start seeing British people heading in the same direction.
Yeah, this is true.
But let's just, if Hamish to Bretton-Gordon is talking about future warfare, and let's just have a quick look at the future soldier. Because, well, in fact, the future digital soldier, now the future digital soldier is a subset of the future soldier. But of course, he needs smart helmets, he needs helmet mounted alert systems, he needs laser threat warning systems and digital night vision goggles and all this stuff that you're seeing on screen at the moment. But apparently in the UK here, major advances are now being made in body worn technology for UK soldiers. And this is improving operational advantage by connecting soldiers to data tools and new technology. What happens when soldiers become reliant on these data tools, Brian, and then the data links break, or they're reliant on their GPS systems for maps and so on? What happens under those circumstances?
Chaos.
Well, let's if we just put that back on screen for a second, let's just go back a few years. This was the beginning of the language of the future soldier. This was the future soldier vision. I think this was 2018 or so. And it began with a partnership between the Ministry of Defence and the Royal College of Art, because where else would you begin if you wanted to bring this type of technology onto the battlefield? And this was Harriet Baldwin, who was Procurement Minister at the time, saying, you might not expect the MOD to work with an art and design university, but it's this kind of non-traditional partnership which will keep our armed forces equipped with cutting-edge technology. Are you impressed by that?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay.
Well, in a way I am, because this is the sort of policy that leads to chaos. This is introducing disruption into proper procurement pathways and systems, and they know it. So when we say that the military is in a pitiful state at the moment, it's been taken there deliberately.
And of course, we need to once again make the point, this is another case of no change Starmer, because this is a continuation of a policy that was set a number of years ago under the Tory government. But we should also, as we were talking about on Friday's programme, make the point that this was also linked to the British Army's activity in Britain, because in Europe, because while one part of this is the digital future soldier, the other part of it is just the way that Britain interoperates with other militaries particularly around Europe. So this is a key part of this future soldier initiative as well. But we have a little bit of video here, which give you bit of a better idea of this digital future soldier. This came from late last year.
The power and data market for products on the soldier is only going to be increasing as time goes on. The more and more devices that soldiers throw onto their load carriage means that they're going to need more power, more batteries, and faster data.
So essentially what we've been showing today is really what I think of as the glue to sticking the future soldier together. What we're calling now the soldier electronic architecture, which is the piece that allows one sensor to talk to another processor, to talk to another device.
It's a USB 2 powered hub, providing the power for all of the ancillaries required by the soldier, as well as all of the data, connecting that to an end user device.
It increases your capability set. So not only now do you have separate discrete capabilities, but you have the ability to share that data between devices. So put in sensor data onto EUDs or heads-up displays, but also then to share that across your team and across your company. One thing that's really different is the whole on-body wireless. So we are seeing better power delivery systems, better data rates. The real step changes. Can we do that wirelessly on body, remove that cable?
It's the first time some of these stakeholders have seen these advanced technologies being used as demonstrations and not just as white papers.
We need to have those capabilities that are there to give us that winning edge. And the way you do that is by linking things in. And you can create capabilities incredibly quickly using software now, rather than having to generate whole new hardware every time. Rapidly combining capabilities to have a whole new range of effects.
What happens if you load a soldier up with 10 tons of batteries? That's a slight exaggeration, of course,
they get tired, Mike, and then the batteries run out and there's a big problem.
Yes.
But if we look at the battle going on in Ukraine, we've got men hiding in holes in the ground, trying to protect themselves from the drones. And is this technology going to take men on the battlefield into a better space? I don't think so, but
well, if
maybe I'm cynical.
Yes. Well, if you want to find out more, head over to the UK or the British Army website. There's a section on our future soldier. Well, one of the things they talk about is rapid technology change. And they're worried about state and non-state adversaries increasingly evolving their methods. But they're talking about more autonomous vehicles, autonomous drones, autonomous weaponry, and so on. And really, this is where I think this is heading. I don't know what. I'm very interested in anybody's comments on this. But if people are so loaded up with batteries and so on that they can't actually run and fight on the battlefield, perhaps what we're really looking at is more and more autonomy and merely people sitting somewhere well away from the front line pressing buttons. Is that more likely?
Well, I think it's a lot more likely, Mike. Absolutely. And I think that's what the game is in Ukraine at the moment. Well, let's just end here by coming back to a little bit of local politics. And it was this tweet by local MP Luke Pollard in Plymouth that caught my attention. I had to look at this couple of times, because when I read it, first of all, I thought that actually he'd made this statement, but it doesn't seem so. The statement is, if we come together to advance all-domain warfare fully interoperable with our allies, we can deliver the capability, deterrence and collective security we need in a more dangerous age. So that's what it's about. But apparently in a speech, Luke Pollard urged close collaboration with allies and industry. This is while he was talking about the big air show that's just taken place. But local MP, who I don't think has been that dynamic, is now helping to defend the country as the Minister for the Armed Forces. Let's just have a look at him doing more of the things which he seemed to be better at. A little video clip and we can have a discussion.
Hello Plymouth, it's rather soggy in Victoria Park, but I'm down here today to look at the 20-mile-an-hour consultation that the City Council started for communities in Stonehouse and in Stoke. There's superb ideas for a new crossing at the bottom of Eldad Hill, which is just behind me in the park down there. It's long overdue, needs to happen, but I'm open-minded about the 20-mile-an-hour proposals that the council's come together with. It's been really interesting hearing different people's views, and one person that's been hearing a lot of people's views today is Councillor Sally Creswell. Sally, you've been here all day and you're looking remarkably dry considering how much rain there's been.
It's because I've been home once and actually dried off and come down again.
What are people saying to you?
We've had a lot of people down, a lot of people with from the youngest and smallest people right up to older people, and it's been really interesting because it's been a really good conversation that's been able to go on today. Some people are fully in favour, some people don't think so, other people feel that there's bits that could be improved and they like some bits but don't like the other bits so much. So what I would urge everyone to do is, if you can't get down here, and I can understand it in this wet weather, I'd urge you to go onto the City Council website and make your views known and share your opinions, because this is a genuine open consultation. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Sally. Please have your view.
Well, there we have your view. So on one hand, he's fully engaged helping World War III arrive as soon as possible. And one place that the Russian nuclear warheads will arrive is on the naval base in Plymouth. But for all the little people, we're just going to test you out on a 20-mile-an-hour limit to completely mess up the rest of the city. So I've been particularly cynical today, Mike, but are these MPs actually even thinking, are they in the real world? I'm not convinced.
Well, we can talk a bit more about that in extra time.
We better leave it there. Ben, thank you very much for joining us for the news. You'll be with us in extra time. A huge thank you to all our audience today, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining us. And as we said in the advert section, big thank you to all the people supporting UK Column by making a financial contribution. We can only do what we do with that financial support. So thank you very much. We'll leave it there. We'll be back for extra fairly shortly for our members. Otherwise, we'll see you at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. Bye-bye.
All right.